When I look at my name on the cipher for the esoteric precessioned cycle of the soul in matter, it goes from Pisces rising through Aries in the 12th, all the way around, back to Pisces rising with Aquarius in the 2nd. So to see that the intellect of Pisces rising and the number 9 is the number 6 that intercepts the second house cusp, and the number 2 which intercepts the third house cusp. That reminds me of how in my human design, where I found out a lot about my Pisces placements, that kind of led me back to the spiraling 9 from the 666 that I was trying to connect all over the place, Mars and Virgo like. The 6-2 in human design, and the trial and error process that I had with that, between getting to like my south node design, Pisces Aquarius cusping placement as a 6, and then having the Neptune cusping Capricorn and Aquarius for the 2 on the third house cusp like that. It kind of reminded me of like my reflector design and how I'm trying to reflect so many different points of view that I've been privy to and absorbed, and seen these aspects of myself shine through it. And I'm an emotional projector, so whenever I feel the right invitation within myself to bring something out contextually, then the codon ring of secrets opens up for me towards the key of light. And my left angle cross of education, which some of those gates also form part of the cross of Eden, and having the gate of caution, and what I spoke about in my video about Mercury in Scorpio, and knowing a part of myself is missing ever since I was young. And our natal chart synthesis with human design and mastering the zodiac through Asterian astrology, linking nakshatras with Greek mythology, brought all the stories of the keys that I kept within myself together into one narrative and knowing. So that's the first thing that I see here. Also, based on the vibrational number of the letters in my name, I know the number K is an 11 and it breaks down to 2, which is interesting because I have K for Cancer, which sits kind of like where my Venus placement is, and then I have that in opposition to the sign of Venus as a Yoga Karaka and the Asura Devil Goat connection that I made with all these 1, 2, 3 steps going from the 0 point between Sag and Capricorn within myself, because mastering the zodiac would put my Neptune on that 0 point cusp between Sag at 29 degrees and Capricorn. So Venus and Neptune as octaves of each other, also relating to waters, also relating to cosmogenesis, and the eye, Neptune as a cyclops and Venus as the drishti, envying Rahu's gaze, coveting the uniqueness that he can bring together. That's why exalting Rahu in her sign of Taurus, and Rohini, and that being a moon nakshatra, and that relating to what Velikovsky said, and the birth of Mars and the Thunderbolts project, and that relating to what Velikovsky said, and the birth of archetypes, and what I learned on Gnostic Informant with the Prometheus 6-hour podcast. It all kind of led me down this rabbit hole of finding myself and searching all the fallen stars and getting Asteria, who's after the goddess Astraea, who is also associated with astrology and the study of fallen stars. They say here, for example, that Astraea was associated with aneromancy and astrology, and she is an ancient goddess of falling stars. Asteria literally translates to study or falling star. She was the daughter of the Titans Coeus and the Titaness Phoebe. Titan god Coeus was the god of intelligence. Phoebe was the goddess of oracular revelation. And she also had a sister called Leto, who became the mother of the gods Artemis and Apollo. And they gave another little tidbit of information here by saying Asteria had an only child though, so her sister was the mother of Artemis and Apollo. And Leto, the sister of Asteria, who had the only child Hecate, who is the goddess of magic, crossroads, and necromancy. So guys, look at what my name and Taurus and the calf and the idolatry and me bringing these statues of Greek worship, because I was recognizing my words, like even Amen was siphoning back all the things that I heard on Slick Dissident's channel by Dylan Sakosha, Chance Garten, Sevon Boma, Jordan Maxwell, Santos Bonacci, Manly P. Hall, Rudolf Steiner, Gigi Young, and then putting it together, Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost and Scorpio Oxman has been doing, and what certain sidereal channels have been doing with highlighting especially Ophiuchus and 13 sign astrology through mastering the zodiac. But you know, there was one part of the focus being that the Asterian sync is something I've only seen Scorpio Oxman do, and it wasn't until I got into his channel that suddenly on my feed a 5 days ago video popped up where two girls were on a podcast, two women I should say, and had Jade Soul Luna on there, and he was discussing things with them about Asterian astrology. So I'm just like, the Lord is good. Like, he gives you the key when you are ready to go through the door within yourself and not afraid to look behind the veil, you know, and to be responsible for the Christ consciousness you birth from yourself, and knowing that it's this work in process, the way, you know, Saturn and the earring and the devil and the demonization of the moon star all came together with the archetype of fixed air, Aquarius running stale, because if we are talking these words into life and they are just constantly reperpetuating trauma because they are binding us volcanically, vulcanizing us with these chitra cutouts of what we think the gods look like, and then we lose sight of what our God particle imaginative principle does, and whatever it generates that is antithetical to that image and likeness, we demonize it as, no, this is from the devil, like, you know. So just that dissonance coming together in harmony for me, and learning that everything was part of a great song. That is what I am hoping to continue with Key Keeper channel at Pure Keys Lake, because I am Kaylinn, the Key Keeper, giving you the keys to what it means to be yourself, as I am learning to key into what it really means to be myself. And I can't tell anybody how to be themselves if I'm not applying the knowledge to myself. You know, one time my friend, probably recognizing just the shadow side of this river of life coming out of me, was the fact that I could always relate things back to myself, and they were like, why do you always like relate to our experience and tell us some weird philosophical story of something similar you went through and what you learned out of it? You know, it actually like made me feel a little bit ashamed, because I was even trying to explain to them that I didn't know any other way to relate to them, and I actually like broke down and cried. And because going to college, it was the first time that I made a real group of friends who kind of knew my home circumstances. At school, I wouldn't tell anybody about my home circumstances because I was so ashamed, and therefore I just was very isolated going through it. I didn't have friends over, I didn't have sleepovers, I didn't, you know, I compartmentalized my home life, and then at school I was just this brilliant star, you know. So yeah, what I was not, I tried to be, and what I was, I tried to hide. And I'm just trying to set the tone and the record straight, and, you know, get past all these mirages, all these separate images of myself, you know, being dysmorphic, and bringing it all together into one morphogenetic field that is my synthesis of knowing, that is the hermetic unfoldment of the mathematical laws of God's mind generating the manifest universe, and the way things become in simultaneity to the isness of all time, and me recognizing so many different timelines, this transit and this channel and the process of embodying my name and God's will and plan for me, and to get out of the confusion of all this nonsense. I had to get into my Hecate, I had to get into the roots, I had to get into the herbs, I had to get into tarot, astrology, demonology, necromancy. I needed to know everything that could be coming my way, because if you're sending me these words like hyperdimensional sigils and I don't know how to break them down, then that is you getting the power over me. And that is how I gave my power away, with like narcissistic abuse, internalizing words that didn't describe me, but were the projection of somebody else, disowning a reflection of themselves that they didn't take accountability for in the mirror. Me being the alchemical product of my parents, and being their mirror, and being their life as a transit and a progression, and being a circuit breaker to that as well, because I had my own individual soul coming in, activating my design, activating my personality, using my personality to figure out my design, using my design to be comfortable with my personality. It was always back and forth between emotional projecting and reflecting. So having had the Promethean goal in mind to be this role model hermit of a human that just knows how to do the good and right thing, say the good and true right thing, and to have that truth ring across time because it was unequivocal and just aligned to all the projections of forethoughts. That's why I speak about things like, almost like I'm trying to prevent some Epimethean hindsight, or, you know, carelessness or forgetfulness that, oh, you didn't say this, you didn't get that right, now they're going to think it means this, now they're going to think it means that. You're going to lead them astray, you're going to give them an idol to, you know, Aquarius rules the calf, and I have the calf Taurus K correspondence with all this connections happening to my sun sign, and at the beginning of my name, and then the fact that the K sits in the Cancer part of the cipher, bringing the Venus Asura corrosive to be outwardly solar, processed to light for the Gemini, and this channel and the AphrAditi connection that I needed for myself, for my own Swadhisthana chakra, for my own Chala Tattva, because I was feeling like I was getting dried out, I was burning out, and learning how to tap into my childlike abundance again, and the power that I thought I gave away by nourishing people, South Node in Revatique, Saturn like, with all these Jupiter in Aquarius 12th from it happening. It's something that I never lost, and it's just connected as a bunch of disconnected nonsense, but I am proudly Humpty Dumpty right now, you know. I've had the egg on my face, I've been the egghead, I've contained the cosmos inside of myself as a wholeness, and I broke it into two. I remember when I feel like my soul chose the birth, chose this life, committed to the story, the narrative, the family, the roots, the moolah that I will be mooling and whirling in around, churning the ocean for the poison and the waters of life, or the milk of life, the Amrita, the nectar of immortality, and Mrigashira and Gemini and youth, and that happening in my 8th house with the Scorpio rising moon. What I learned about the Sagittarius rising having the Vipreet Raja Yoga with Scorpio moon with Cancer in the cusp of the 8th. When the ruler of the 8th goes into the 12th house, the lord of the 8th in the 12th. And how I reverse the fortune of what things mean to me, even if I have to fortune tell like a freaking gypsy, lying to myself, to time travel all these different meanings and potentials, just so that I can like escape the Esmeralda froloness of the sanctuary that I don't feel I have in church, that I don't feel I have around religious people who talk about God, and me needing to talk about devils, demons, angels, and the above to feel closer to God. It's just another one of the keys that I had to keep to myself. But now I'm like, with what Keykeeper means for me and what Keeper of the Keys said, Kayla, this morning, it was confirmation for me to understand that those who will hear you will listen if it is meant for them, if it is meant to be a key unto them. You can only be yourself. You can only express what it means to you. What you can aspire towards is the truth, and the truth shall set you free, you know. And I am going through the Prometheus Unbound part of the tragedy, you know, and learning to be the torchbearer of my own light and know how to mutable fire, fix fire, cardinal fire with all of this in the right process at the right time. Virgo Mars North Node attenuating for this change of my status in life in the 10th house, because coming from the Pisces in the 4th and all of that Neptunian confusion disposited by the Neptune in Capricorn in the 2nd, you know, I was very much heading towards delusion. You know, a few months ago I literally like had this breakdown of yelling at my parents and telling them like, I just want to be put into a psychiatric asylum, something. I just want to get medicated or treated or dulled out because I want to die. I don't want to feel anything anymore. I feel everything and I just don't know what to do with that, because I can't give to people in a way that improves the ethernomics. My second name is Ethan, right? And it means strong and firm in Hebrew, but it also relates to certain connotations of light. And it sounds like ether and ethanol, and the way I would be a fuel to a flame in the mutable Sag placements. Everywhere I went, I just didn't know who was going to feel burned by me, or who was feeling this Plutonian aura coming from a 12th house perspective. But I had to meet them with my son in the 7th house, and also they were getting burned by me, just being myself. So learning the Apollo journey of like, yeah, you gotta ride your chariot in the proper orbit, because otherwise you will scorch the earth. And don't get too cocky. Don't be like is it the Dioscuri, which is like Aries, which is where the sun exalts, right? Taking the steeds of Apollo over and trying to drive the chariot of the sun. I believe they got their heads cut off for that in the process. But the Ketu and the Rahu and the head and the tail, and where the sun exalts in the Gemini and the Vamshapada, and where the anima mundi and the esoteric body, cosmic body places these things, and where esoteric astrology has, you know, Gemini has this peak northern point where the reach out from the North Pole creates the six and the six and the six, and how it kind of like a potter's wheel shapes everything coming down. And Velikovsky's work and the old alignments and the new alignments coming through with the Thunderbolts project and all these usurpations that my God of War programming in 3rd grade on a PlayStation video game brought to me by my father, right? Obviously as compensation for all his shenanigans. But I digress. You know, it still brought me to that level in the game where I had to seek the wisdom of war through Athena, and knowing that Prometheus and Athena came together for the creation of mankind's essence, Prometheus giving the fire, right, and the flower of life, and Athena giving the butterfly, and how those things came together for man to intuit his essence as that which becomes, that which is transformational, that which is searching, perfecting, and evolving. That is what the Mrigashira birth of Mars through the Ardra, Typhon, Brahma, Ardra, Rohini relationship goes through, like with a Typhon, Zeus, Pushya, Punarvasu, on the other of Artemis, the wilderness, Typhon being in the middle of Gemini as Ardra, and Prometheus being the beginning portion which cusps the last degree of Taurus as Prometheus. So Prometheus on a rock of Taurus. Like, come on guys, am I like crazy to like appreciate the Bible as this meta text that in its concord and correspondence with people doing the due diligence linguistically, you know, it really brings the similarity of the story out. So at the end of the day, to me, it just comes down to intention. What are you doing with the narrative? How is it serving you? What can you create out of it? If you can create a statue or artwork out of it, that's great. If you create an idol that leads people astray, well, that is great too, because K is part of the alphabet. K is part of the Taurus field's expression. K is part of like the numbers and primes generated from the vortex as a potentiality, with how it is congruent as a letter to everything that the K archetype expresses. So I'm just going off on a tangent here about how everything is necessary, and the light and the shadow side of these interpretations shouldn't keep you stuck on like, oh, I was named after the devil, oh, I was named to like go through idolatry because my Venus principle was actually like, you know, going through this inward corrosive, outwardly solar Asura ascension to the throne above the Most High, Draco Makara Capricorn goat, where Saturn and the devil gets syncretized through tarot, the number 10, the 1 and the 0, Mula Hecate being in tropical Capricorn at about 8 degrees, and she's the goddess of roots, and Natura being Asterian Capricorn. Like, there's so many things that connects these things as a Lumashi tapestry, that the story is continuing to talk and feed into each other, and it's always being read and it's always processing. Like, you don't cut the sky out into characters and then like have a mythology on each character and then not have the characters be in a relationship to each other because the individual cutouts contrasted with what was cut out with that which precedes them or that which antedates them. So That's the growth cycle, that's the germination cycle, that's the north-south, eternals, immortals, underworld cycle of these world trees, kabbalistically, astronomically, esoterically, hermetically, psychosomatically. In the synthesis of you, it all comes together as the key. You know, the way you as a star is also pointing to Allah, all law points back to you at the heart of it. And me being a like Kaylinn, key keeping, intellectual who was just primed with wanting the emotional aspect of life to be as beautiful as what the intellectual sensibility could create. As a Venus ruled Libra moon, finally figuring that out, that is me becoming this knowledge and this knowing because it existed in me, and me expressing correspondences to it doesn't take away from the fact that it was my gift from God. It was my birth. It was the universe creating me as an expression of itself in that moment. And the way I express towards everything that I meant to the moment of my birth, what I meant to my parents, what they wanted to get out of me as a unifying principle, because they probably had me to, because my dad's been cheating, my dad's been doing the things before they got married, my mom's been warned, she just didn't want to listen. And but part of her knowing was maybe she needed to be with this man to give birth to my legendary Christ-like key, because I was able to unlock for her the parts of her trauma and incarnational like steps where she got stuck with like my Pluto sitting on her Neptune and her Mercury sitting on my moon, and like her Jupiter sitting on my Pluto with Venus. You know, it was like me being this transformational fire to her to be like, girl, the significator of a husband is not this abundance, expansion, growth, joy, joviality. Like we had all these things, but it was like coming from such a toxic, compensatory place. So when I learned my trine, Jupiter, Sun, Chiron situation, and what my astrologer said as Jupiter being compensatory, and I learned how my intellect was birthed out of like competing with my dad, or him competing with me, or my mom emasculating him and idealizing me, and you know, just the Uranus Gaia Kronos Zeus of it all. That was the birth of my Eros desire principle, culminating towards the AphrAditi goddess of love principle, culminating towards the Ganymede cupbearer of Zeus Jupiter principle, culminating to the AphrAditi, mother of the gods, Mercury, moon, Asteria, universe, and beyond, Hecate and the root of the galactic center principles. The all power, that is what I wanted to see, because I was like, why? You know, and in my name I have the letter Y, dead center, Kayli double N. So that double dose of N, and what I did on Leo and narcissism, it was him and it was me. It was my own mirror, it was my own shortcoming or my own aspect of self not integrated, or being sun in 7th house tempered by Libra moon energy, with Venus holding the higher degree up in Gemini, being very corrosive towards myself, my own light, my own, like, it's almost like I always needed to filter it so that it doesn't burn people. And then learning that there's the shadow side of having all these years and masks, and learning to alchemically come full circle to put that Libra moon on the scales of my art. That is what this transit brought for me. as the key keeper, as Kaylinn, as he who is like God, purifying myself with the knowledge and wisdom of all that I am. Within my knowing, it all synthesizes. As a continuation of the recent super full blue moon that we had in Aquarius conjunct Saturn, I am in a process of mental decluttering and purifying and doing a lot of bringing together of things and doing a lot of putting to eternal death, basically, of certain things. And I do feel like I am waking up. I am finally feeling like there's like a worthiness to myself that I want to redeem now that I'm older and wiser, and I've recognized so many patterns and I just absorbed so much information. I've been doing this trial and error process, and I've been going on the roof. Sometimes I get so irritated with the fact that I can't do these videos to my standard. I've seen creators like Kaylinn and people give very sensorially enriching expressions of the wisdom of nakshatras and the various mythologies. And me, I'm just kind of like sitting in front of my fireplace on my porch next to the park with a ditch of water coming from the Drakensberg. And, at the same time, it is just so perfect because where I am cradled between the Drakensberg, the fact that I live at number 12, the fact that my street's name is called De Vries, which is like the freeze, the fact that I have my South Node in Pisces in the 4th house, the fact that I have placements across various different tropical, sidereal, mastering the zodiac, you name it. There's something very vacuous drawing me to like plant a flag of owning Pisces energy. And as a Gemini, they say Gemini is the less emotional version of Pisces, or the intellectualized external version of Pisces, or whatever it is. Like, you hear so many random things trying to relate the signs to each other, and there are these, everything is true because everything exists, but everything exists as a lie between the perspective we have created as the dialectic between the contrast of presence and absence when we intellectualize our object recognition and try to compute that into the realm of the sensorium, the imagination, the emotional, and the psychodynamic, which we will then start calling spiritual, and then looking into the processes of creation and science and all of these things that my Mars, North Node, Virgo, Capricorn, 10th house significations are putting together for me, because the Mars is also trining Neptune in Capricorn in the 2nd house, and the fact that I've just had to basically accept that I don't have the type of intelligence that I see online. I don't think like exactly the way other people think, although I can reflect many different points of view, I can absorb many points of view. I'm very lunar in that sense with my Venus in Cancer. And if you want to know how the relationship between signs and houses and how they produce the functional light, the sign, and how they bear that light, the house. Check out more on that for the 5 principles of organized complexity in the link. But using the 6 signs, Aries to Virgo, as pairs, the way my astrologer does, and using human design, things that I've learned to kind of like, because my Gemini tendency was probably always to look for like 2 mirrors equally yet opposite, magnetically attracted to each other and yet in perfect repulsion, so that the stasis of each oppositional perspective can like stand still and stare at each other. And when I think of what my name unlocked into, the channel of myself, and the birthing of this channel by looking into the YouTube of self, what my astrologer told me about all the glimpses that I create with Leo in the 9th, Saturn in the 5th in Aries, Sagittarius rising, Pluto in the 12th in Sagittarius, Sagittarius rising in the Leo decan of Mrigashira, I believe it's the Scorpion of Amshapada. It blended what Mastering the Zodiac and my Ophiuchus rising told me, because I've always needed to integrate these cusps, with my sun being on the cusp of magic, with my moon being on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio in the Mastering the Zodiac, as I found out now, whereas before it was on the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius. The way all my placements kind of like shifted back a sign, it made my Mrigashira searching star through all the mirages of the fallen stars and the, you know, way our words siphon back to being necromantically involved with all of these idolatries, and the way Kaylinn and K and the calf in Hebrew relates to Taurus and idolatry in the age of Taurus, and how, you know, me having a square between my Saturn and Venus really being what makes me feel that sense of, I can imagine with my Venus in Cancer in the 8th, you know, I erode the invisibility of the descendant and project myself into these images beyond death. That's where I spoke about, you know, being in touch with my multidimensional self, the way I've heard Ascension community terms being kind of, I don't want to say weaponized, but definitely monetized, and, you know, people could see they can like get a brand off of that type of talk. And, you know, I just like, I've been in the background of all of these blooming conversations happening, you know, ever since Zeitgeist and that like first little Anunnaki creation video that we had. You know, I remember very clearly like how the first Zeitgeist had like a reference to like an Exodus of Eden moment, but there were these like Persian looking soldiers, and I always wondered why. Well, the buried girl told me why, Persephone told me why, all law told me why I am the 5-pointed star, and why I am inwardly corrosive like an Asura, and why I act like a serpentine Naga, and why I am spitting poison. Like, if you've heard my, I almost want to say my reptilian etheric double kind of like fuck me over with just like doing whatever it wants to maybe like put either like my subconscious in action of manifesting whatever I absorbed about that information, or just the fact that we all have a reptilian mindset that is trying to like be calculating and manipulative and restraining like the ego and not let the full beast of self be like unleashed, or whatever all of that is. At this point, I am just here for everything, and I am not going to be medused by our goal of getting to like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We might be sitting and dipping our feet, Gemini, in the Milky Way, but the land of milk and honey, baby, you best believe I am going to find the magic. I am going to find I am the magic. I am the magic. I am on the cusp of it. Literally. If people tell you literally from this day forth, please decipher them. And yeah, don't be afraid of Mercury ardrying, whether you are tropically obscured to just even think that about yourself. It doesn't matter. You needed all the keys to unlock all the doors because you are this labyrinth. You are this galactic generative process of the prime numbers, of asymptotic relationships of form manifesting as the physical approximation of animate embodied thought processes beyond what AI and intelligence that we know artificially can mimic or compute. They can't do what we do. They are literally needing to be trained as we speak to appropriate what we do. None of the art that you see is able to exist because a human didn't like create that first. Create the image and likeness of that first, drew from its Leo self the light of Aquarius that it would pour out as fixed thoughts. Fixed thought is art, is technology, it is Shatabisha, it is, the muses of Denishta, which is the most famous, like the icons that I spoke about, like Whitney Houston, they who are amused by Apollo and can take the solar logos, like the moon and the sun's relationship to Shravana. Brittany and her conservatorship, she was still a star despite everything that she went through that we can only like project upon and live vicariously through. Like, we are all being like toxic narcissists, using her as an interject, using her as a reference, using her as a fragmented MK alter ego of what she really is, or who she really was trying to be. Same as Whitney Houston, what her voice was really saying. Like, we were like just not wanting to see what we didn't want to see at the time that it didn't serve us, and now we want to have all these video essays and this and that, and like, no shade to Miss Leola Brown. I actually feel that she has her heart in the right place. I think that she just recognizes the climate that we live in today, that you have to go on a live stream and like tease people and give them the give them the juice, like, not my words, her words. So does it trigger me to recognize patterns that other people have been called out when that has been the MO or the red flag, supposedly, in a grand equation of cause and effect, and me now just coming to like this uranium conclusion of like, is she in it for money? Like, didn't she get her piece of the estate? I have to question that with the integrity of that came to me. And if that wasn't God and the Holy Spirit and me needing to respect the fact that I could have a thought that, you know, even if somebody else thought it, I didn't think it until I was watching her videos 6 months ago and then re-watching it for like the Whitney Houston video that I did as Persephone, where even I made the mistake of seeing her as a mug, a star, when, you know, Pusher, the most auspicious, and Zeus, and so yeah, the lightning bolt that I had on all of that, you know, Scorpio Oxman, also helped me to find more of a respect for Chinese astrology. I don't know what my gripe was with Chinese astrology. Like, I just couldn't get into like the I Ching or like all the different animals that they had. There was just something about it that like felt like, oh, you know, like I could appreciate it, but it just like it's like it wasn't beautiful to me. And I am learning a lot of times that like even if something turned you off because it like wasn't beautiful to you at first, if you just like look, I don't want to say hard enough, but like look smart enough, um because I don't feel like we should look too hard to see the beauty in the multiplicity of meaning and the layers of reality, and just the fact that we are alive and have mercy to be grateful for. We have awe, we have wonder, we have no fucking clue what's going on, and yet it's all these things. So like, how can you not wonder about that? How can it not be wonderful? So like, my thing is like, okay, am I playing myself because I spelled these words, but then I didn't know what they meant unconsciously, but like I did know what I wanted it to mean consciously? And then, you know, the fact that those two polarities had to, you know, like the Kundalini snake that I'm talking about, like integrating your etheric double, integrating the twin flame, integrating the alchemical product of the other that you have separated from yourself, because actually there is no other. And you know, going through depression, going through the solipsism, the nihilism, the every ism of existentialism, like, oh my god, like you come out thinking you are bipolar, you come out thinking you are ADHD, you come out thinking you have Asperger's, you come out thinking you have narcissistic abuse syndrome, you come out thinking you have all of these complexes, just to have complexity, to have like these overarching words so that you can like umbrella and apex that new beginning that like those words Aries you onto as your I am. Because, and that's what I feel like I'm always doing, like I'm always outgrowing my shelves, my cells, you know. And we all do this, and I love that there is beautiful poetic, masterfully metatextual literature and concordance and cross-linguistic syncretic reference through symbology and art, and the fact that science and the cosmogenic story is catching up to that, and our AI and computers and access to the revolution that shall not be televised but digitized. um Even the launch of Sybil AI by Sevan Boma, that was very much something that I even like. Before I knew I would call it a chatbot or an AI art image generator or whatever, I just had the idea of like, what if there's something that I could just tell what to like write for me, or, you know, paint the picture of it, like plain and simple. Like the same way I feel like I thought of Shazam, and then it happened. You know, I thought of the word Bacchany, and like I heard it on a TV show. I came into Asterian astrology through Scorpio Oxman, and the only reason I found that was probably because I was just really searching for something deep and scorpionic, and then there he was with like a very minimal number of views to his video, somewhere at the very bottom of me scrolling until I clicked on it, and then wow, can't regret a single second of it. And if life has those things to offer, and it has this beauty to the trauma, the way euphoria can give you a whole visual experience of what that is like, you know what I mean? But when you're in it, you like, ugh, these people. But then you also have to be like, ugh, me again. Me. I am the problem. It's me. Hi. So, yeah, there was a lot of that going on with the listening star of Shravana wanting to muse Apollonianly towards understanding the most famous on an archetypal world stage word, syncretizing through self key keeper level, and purifying through the process, refining, deleting a lot of things, but realizing there's no trash bin, and just learning to put the picture back and remembering and doing the tapestry and the joining and the weaving. There are these podcasts on Universe podcast channel, and they had a little segment called Vibrant, and they have Marvel Demystifiers, and they have like all these synchromistic connections with words and puns and etymology and philology, and how language migrated from east to west and left, right to the center, and all over the world, and the artifacts and the real evidence that we have for the claims that we make, and for the epithets and relationships that we ascribe to words that all break down to similar words in the runes of letters and the gematriological correspondences to numbers, and then getting very much into the platonic solids of the plain and simple. Tons of information comes from knowing like just one thing, and that's very Aquarius, Saturn, Moon season into the tropical part of this experience for me, as not only the true sidereal coming together with the tropical Pisces mirror of it all, bouncing off the face of the waters, and me looking into my human design as a reflector, and why my channel started. I was very grateful even this morning for someone who has the name Kaylinn, and she goes by #GodsGirl, and her channel is called Keeper of the Keys, which I wanted to have my channel named like that, but I couldn't get that handle because it was taken. And it's so beautifully full circle that even me tuning into a live this morning, it was just a confirmation for me to like, because I was starting to feel anxious again, and I think in my first videos it was a bit evident that I didn't want to like conflate things or make things more confusing, but I was confused. I was feeling just a mess, and I was just very congested with all this information, and I'm working out the structure of it, and I'm trying to listen to myself and listening to my name, saying he who is like God, keeper of the keys, pure, slender and fair. It reminds me of all this liminal space work that I have to do, this Jupiter-Venus work that I have to do with my Aquarius Jupiter and my Cancer Venus, and the quincunx between them, and the square between Venus and Saturn, and Neptune in Capricorn in the second house, opposite to Venus, where it would naturally, belong in the second house. There was just a lot of like me needing to like figure out like where this discrimination of gene key 12 and all this caution and all this codon of secrets and all this vanity and all this sun exalting in the Gemini Navamshapada of Aries, where I have my designed sun also like in the tropical placement. It is on the cusp, gene key 25. I have different placements here. Some of them are 0 degree iron Amsha, some of them are 23.4, some of them are whole signs, some of them are, I just played around with it so you guys can see all the different perspectives that I've been needing to look at myself. And then I turned those charts up and down. I went through my divisional charts of all of them. So I've just been on a real mission, because I was getting to the point of feeling, well, I can't unlock the people who I feel are stuck behind a closed door or in Pandora's box full of monsters with no hope. And I was turning myself into a reflective caricature of them and being very bad to myself, just to prove to them that a pattern reverberates, imprints. There are sensitivities to be taken into account. There's, awareness that needs to be taken account. And accountability has been a very big topic online and in the world at large. We are all getting revved up very much because we see the eye blinding happening all the time. And my cusp of magic, Gemini, Sun, I am gene key 25 Aries Sun, designing myself in the perfect personality that I want to have. Mars and Virgo conjunct the North Node in the 10th, so that I can execute my Saturn in Aries in the 5th, Leo in the 9th, Pluto in the 12th, Sag, fire placements, with everything I want to see, and burning away the dross of what I don't want to see, so that my Sag mind third to a Libra rising moon in the true sense of it. It's just pinging back and forth and going through cycles esoterically and exoterically, this way around the wheel and that way around the wheel, going through opposites attract, going through all this Gemini, Mrigashira searching star, the mirages of self. So we need to honor the process of the revelation and allow all of the environment to speak in its simultaneity and multiplicity, and constantly discipline ourselves to hear the signal. Gemini in the third decan. In tropical signs, I have a 27 degree Gemini Sun, which transliterating with a 0 degree Ayanamsha on a nakshatra wheel using Sidereal astrology. That is a third decan Punarvasu. Mutable a Gemini decan, because in the system that I ascribe to, the true manifestation of a sign happens in its relation to the cusp of the next sign. So the final decan of a sign is where its true energy is. Its first decan is where it's kind of carrying over the transition of the previous sign, and the middle decan is, in my opinion, what needs to become the fixed reference point, heart of things for that sign to express its energy as a element and modality. So for example, Gemini has a Libra deacon in the middle. It has a Gemini deacon in the beginning, and it has a Aquarius deacon in the end. That is accordingly from mutable signs to cardinal signs to fixed signs, the way Gemini is the first mutable sign and air sign, and then following that sequence to the next air sign you have Libra, which is cardinal, and then the next air sign is Aquarius, which is fixed. Now that gives me one picture, so let's just keep that in mind, because here I also see that it gets switched, where the beginning of Gemini is the pure energy of Gemini, because it is that which would need to transition the birth of Mars out of Moon, Rohini, Soma, somatics of the anima embodied, and then, you know, even Adam not being separate yet. So when I saw this discussion online, which I will reference here, on the deacon, the third deacon of Gemini specifically, and they spoke about how it's ruled by the sun, and how the sun exalts in Aries in a Gemini Navamshapada. And when I thought of my Sagittarius rising Leo deacon Purva Ashada, and how my tropical astrologer focused a lot on my Leo 9th house for making my Sag rising in opposition to the Jupiter in the 3rd in Aquarius come to life in the context of how my Gemini in the 7th sun projects my life focus towards the pursuit of knowledge and bringing down new knowledge and structuring it and using that usefully to search for my ego, because the Saturn in Aries is in the 5th, and all these glimpses that I can identify with by splitting myself into fragments of the absence of what I am and what I am not, always finding some sort of twin in somebody else's experience, and the world being very much a twin flame, mutable Sag ascendant to my Gemini descendant experience of myself. Because yeah, in my concept of the world, it's like when I wake up, the sun comes out of my eyes, and the sun just like creates the light of the earth being solid, and it's like my moon eye goes hidden and new and void within, when it kind of like goes from a full moon starry night dreamscape into a waking observer physical reality state. And that's my Ketu in Pisces with Saturn, and my Mars in Virgo with Chiron and the North Node, according to Mastering the Zodiac placements. So the integration of my natal chart synthesis, which I am going to link once I have the proper Lumashid mood board of clips and videos to just really take my editing there, because part of this transit and part of starting this channel was also honoring the Leo Aquarius dynamic of externalizing knowledge and creating it and systematizing it, and being disciplined to stay on my story and to refine it, and not be seduced by the imaginings of ease, and not be seduced by everybody else's interpretations and their words and their names of God. Because my name tells me the key to it all that I'm keeping to myself, code and ring of secret like, is that he who is like God is the keeper of the keys. And bringing that in alignment with Gemini, And you know how I went on a golden gate, silver gate, golden key, silver key, Apollo, Artemis, galactic center, anti-center, Ophiuchus, Taurus, integration, and my searching star Mrigashira coming onto Taurus with mastering the zodiac, and for my Sag rising, Ophiuchus, Pluto, all of these things kind of making sense, right? And the Libra moon and the Gemini Venus and the, you know, just being just so on that scale all the time. Like even the way I talk, yes, it's tropically third decan sun Uranian in a sense, because I'm trying to fix all these thoughts together, but it is also this mutable turning into the Punarvasa Cancer Artemis energy of the galactic anti-center, which is like this expansive brain potential that I'm trying to open up through my Leo light waters of life connection through the sun and soul, and what I read about Mercury and Hasta and soul and Christ and esoteric astrology and Virgo attenuating for Leo the way my astrologer said it. And then it just kind of came full circle with the listening star Shravana and Saturn in Aquarius and the moon there, listening to Velikovsky talk about the moon as AphrAditi, and just working through my cognitive dissonance of even making mistakes, like penning Whitney for Imaga's son when she was actually Pusher, and you know, pinning myself for Mrigashira Gemini sun when it was actually Taurus. It all kind of came together, and I'm trying to work through the noise in my head, and because it's like the download came through, and obviously there's a lot of files in the background noise, like even universe is confirming me right now, God is confirming me. And on YouTube this morning I woke up and there was somebody called Keeper of the Keys, and a couple of days ago when I started my channel I couldn't take that name, and I was like, oh, why, you know, and I had to like be creative with trying to say Key Keeper in my name for my channel, because it relates to my name Kaylinn through the letter K, which we will be doing a breakdown for, you know, and a synthesis for ultimately with all the other letters within the lake of myself, because in Afrikaans we say lake for something looks like that lake Swiss, but a lake as in a body of water also reminds me of a dead body, because in Afrikaans we also say a lake is a corpse, and then the idea of the moon, star and water, and the sun and water, and one being the inverse of the other, and Castor and Pollux, and the sun and the moon, and Apollo and Artemis, and the Punarvasu, Mercury and Titi coming together, and my human design relating Revati, Mercury height, Venus exaltation, via Saturn, where my Mercury conjuncts in the design, and then it being in Gemini in the personality, birth, and where my sun is, and where everything is in terms of just calibrating me to attenuate for my 10th house Mars Virgo, perfectionism that I see within myself as a Promethean potential to manifest, and knowing that I've had this Taurian process about it, and I've had this very Geminian Venus process about it, and coming to terms with Venus as an Asura made me understand why I went through such inner corrosiveness for this refinement of the inner gallery that I'm constantly referencing. So Shravana and Apollo and the listening star and the conservatorship of Britney Spears, and just the change that I felt in my life, and seeing it because of my bias, looking for answers on a subconscious level, then seeing it in other people that I would identify with, like Whitney Houston or Britney Spears, as celebrity examples who, you know, had their name in the media so long and for different reasons, but you know what they mean to everybody kind of like relates back to like how everybody has a part of their chart that will be able to key into that gate in human design and personality of what a certain contextual synthesis manifest when we just think of like the random generation of prime numbers and where they are found and how the connecting function of 6 is always kind of like asymptotic because it knows its functionality is to perfect a source that becomes it through being the self that wasn't it and going from manifest to unmanifest and back and forth in the Libra sunset and the Scorpio Phoenix Uttara Ashada out of the lunar sunrise, the Leo Deacon Purva Ashada waters of life that needs to kind of like be purified, the moon as a dead star and the sun as a living star. And what I said about lakes and corpses and the sun and keys and kings and the letter K and knowing and what my astrologer said about my potential for knowing, but the confidence of structuring my knowledge. You know, that is why I'm on this journey. That is why I'm doing this playing around with all these different ideas and concepts of myself, thoughts that I have that I feel are maybe different to what other people has put out there, where I just want to connect it in a whole new Shatabisha way by chiaroscuring the light and shadow of all of these interpretations that we've been led down the gold of this rainbow Kislev bridge between the Gemini I see and the Sagittarius I am pointing and ascending towards, and all of these Ophiuchus hidden things. And 13 and demonization and the new Aries and degree theory, and it's just like the download is within me because my life story, the key, my name, it is all inscribed upon the layers of meaning of my knowing, and relating that to narratives that already exist out there so that they can be right relationship. You know, that is why me going through the process of the graphics and stuff, I go from the bottom up type of substrate of this because I know that how much I've been inspired by Greek mythology, which is why it is very heavily themed in some of my graphics thus far. The marble statues that I would marvel at, you know, I told my aunt I wanted to be a Renaissance man after she asked me what I wanted to be, and I didn't know, but I told her all the things that I wanted to do. I said I wanted to do archaeology, and I want to be an artist, and I want to be a scientist, and I want to make cosmetics and lotions and potions that give people true results from like cellulite or whatever I saw on TV or wherever around me. I was like, how can I improve on that? How can I do this? How can I do that? I swear guys, I feel sometimes that Shazam, the music scanning app, was kind of stolen out of my brain from the lower astral sphere, or someone channeled my idea, or I channeled somebody's idea because I knew that I thought about it. And you know, back before there was like apps, and I had a little Vodafone, and it was like, you know, when Blackberries were just coming to South Africa, and I was probably like in the 7th grade. And then I remember like thinking about it again and then thinking, oh my God. And the weirdest thing is how it connected for me is like, I thought of the word backney for acne on the back. And then I heard it in like a comedy show, and then I was like, man. And then, when Shazam was this thing, and then I was like seeing ads on it, like either on YouTube or somewhere, I don't remember. And then I was like, but didn't I want something like that? Like, oh my God, that is literally like my idea. So that's where it came full circle also for me to kind of appreciate that the key is within all time and no time, ascension, descension, being, not being, it is all you. God, the devil, heaven, earth, it is all you. And the word of God has life because you have the breath of life to animate it. You are the living edifice of these things. So when I watched Keeper of the Keys, and her name is Kaylinn, and knowing just what I know of etymology and seeing just one video of her, I knew I'm on the right track, guys, because what she does is what I'm trying to do. And the very first video I watched, which I'm going to link here, is where she spoke about the way that she is planning rebranding the content on her channel, especially because of the feedback she got from Christian subscribers. Because me growing up Christian and having this intellectual curiosity that was just par none to my environment, because Jupiter in the third in Aquarius, I was the weird one with this abundance of mental energy all the time, you know, and you know, something came from it that was really good, and some things came from it that I just felt like, well, am I just holding on to that information because it's compensatory to a dogma, or it fills a hole that, you know, there's a gap in my understanding or acceptance of like the true, I almost want to say, like, if God had to make up the rules of mathematics, why would he do it in terms of like the 5 principles of organized complexity through 6? It's so that we can have the process of natal chart synthesis, as above so below, hermetically coincide with the astral as it creates a star in the physical. And that's why we can study Asterian astrology, because we are the fallen stars, you know. So when someone in Hollywood's elite club gets their fallen star status on the Walk of Fame, in the city of Los Angeles, that's just another way of ritualizing these same old ideas. So me learning, you know, all my aversion to idolatry and how I very innately felt as a young child so uncomfortable in church, I could see almost like spirit and energy and ideas and thoughts being siphoned out of people towards like the pastor, towards like the music happening and the like what do they call it, incense. And I just felt it was a very weird, very discombobulating experience. And I can remember my mental synesthesia of, you know, projecting imagination onto that moment, the way I see done in like very good artistic movies and stuff like that. So, you know, so really something about seeing things come together the last couple of days. Oh, my nose is so runny. And I've been so sick, guys, and it's because I'm clogged up. I'm holding on to things that doesn't serve me, you know, and I'm not listening to my body. I'm not listening to myself. I'm not listening to God, you know. And when I watched that thing this morning and everything that I felt about Am I offending things? Am I syncretizing things that doesn't belong together? Am I already led so far down a straight the rabbit hole that I can't see the Mriga of a Shera, you know? But then the Aditi Punarvasu Artemis coming together for me of all this Eros, Sag, Serpentarius, Eros, Apollo, Christ, Lucifer, all of these transformational character arcs, it really gave me the awareness that to my ascendant from the way my Jupiter went out into the third eye space and forth from my moon being in Scorpio tropically. And in the Sidereal mastering the zodiac scheme, my moon is in Libra on the last degree, like literally on the cusp. It could technically be in Scorpio. So I just think it gave so much more precision as to like where my perspectives were coming from, where my ideals and the way I was trying to go about harmony and the path of least resistance versus like that which I really can actively religiosically fight for to break up the tamasic energy towards something sattvic. My Mars in Virgo conjunct the North Node in the 10th house with Lilith, conjuncting my midheaven in Leo. It's so much attenuating for ego, which is why I got confused with like a sun in the 7th house and being a reflector in human design. I just got so confused, guys, and the confusion is clearing and the clutter is clearing. Like even the way my phone reflects now much better, like where my mind is streamlining towards, because I kid you guys not, I had thousands of screenshots from just different websites, different videos that I watched, different little pins that would just give me a remembrance of like this, that, and the next. So that is why my channel sounds like that, starting these things, because it came from that place of real confusion and being in the thick of it and trying to claw my way out back to the light. And with this recent moon transit and me going no contact with my devouring mother and everything that my life has been objectively codified for through the process of natal chart synthesis, and my own journey of searching the stars and the fallen stars and the Asterian Prometheus coming full circle back out of all these Mrigas of Ashera, of who is the Queen of Heaven, the Mother Goddess, who is the twin flame to the sun, because we can all agree on the good of the sun and day, but the moon and the stars, that's where the hidden hand and Hasta and soul veils the Christ. That Libra veneer of Venus, the drishti of the eyes and the gaze, the discrimination, the inward corrosiveness and outwardly solarness, the black horizon versus the pastel multicolored spectral array of a sunset split in two, Blavatsky mentioning the split, Mars and cutting, and the scorpion as a sheathing tool, like a circumcision tool almost, or like a castration tool, because we see it is also clasping at the virile member of Sagittarius, which is that beast of the Kundalini that can be a water horse, Purva Shada, floodgate if you don't, grow it constructively by having the mental germination process of Saturn mula tricona in an air sign of Aquarius, so that the Uranus, which would exalt in Scorpio 12 to Sagittarius, can be brought into the toroidal nature of manifesting Capricorn second house energy as the support to your ascension process in your knowing, building on your ideas, building on your downloads, building on syncretizing it and shaping it and refining it and building these mood boards, building these pictures, building these prompts. Now we have AI and chatbots and all these things that are here to help us, so like I don't really have an excuse anymore to not be concise and to be clear and to, for the exoteric Aquarius rising, Gemini is in the 5th house, Libra is in the 9th house, so it's trying to bring that balance out of its heart to this Akashic library of ruins, and for the exoteric Aquarius cipher, which would have Pisces in the 12th house and Virgo in the 6th, rather than in the 8th, in the way the exoteric gives us. The daily work of Aquarius is, like my astrologer would then say, in the esoteric context of seeing my natal chart synthesis applied to the cipher, of how I need to bring my Jupiter and Aquarius Uranus placements to fruition. I would need to have the Mars Virgo 6th house planetary joy with Rahu figured out and know how to focus myself and attenuate for this ego in a way that can be useful for what is in the 2nd house of Aquarius, Aries. So Aries is in the 3rd house for the Aquarius rising in exoteric rising sign placements. Aries is in the 11th house for the esoteric Aquarius rising. And what do they have in the 2nd house? Capricorn, which I as a Sag rising have. So that's how you become the GOAT, the elite, the shadow worker, Shatabisha, age, Aegean, new age, cup-bearing understander of all of this knowledge. Because that key of having the muses drumming, Saturn the listening star, Shravana Apollo, moon relationship with the moon in Aquarius and AphrAditi, and all of these revelations, somehow it connected for me, and I don't even know if any of it made sense right now. But what I have on my post about keep off the key, Kaylinn, those who have understanding for it, with the ears to hear and the eyes to see and a heart to get a sense of it, they will listen to these things as, bro, you're making sense, keep going.